Welcome to the So Much More podcast, where we talk with people in the custom window treatment, soft home furnishings industry, and so much more. I'm your host, Seal DeGuglielmo. My guest on today's podcast is Robin Reynolds. She started her drapery workroom, R2 Fabric Design, in 2007 when her last child was completing high school, which is a little different than some of us with kids. She has a really interesting business model, and I love talking with her about it. I really hope you enjoy hearing from Robin today. Robin, thank you so much for joining me today. I really appreciate it.
Well, thank you for having me.
I love touching base with and hearing the stories about people in our industry because for a lot of us, the stories have some similar parts of it, and then it changes dramatically and we all have our own unique circumstances. And I noticed yours right away. Many of us started our businesses when our children were small, and you waited till your youngest was in high school to start your business. So why don't you tell us a little bit first about what your life is like, and then a little bit about how you got started in your business.
Okay, well, of course, my name is Robin Reynolds, and I own a drapery workroom, R2 Fabric Design. I've been married 42 years, have 4 children, 3 grandchildren, 7 grand dogs, all of whom need our assistance and our babysitting at times. I've always lived in Oklahoma. I've never lived out of the state. I grew up in Oklahoma City, but I now live in Norman, Oklahoma. I learned to sew from my mother and grandmother while I was in high school. My husband and I met in high school and went to the same university and married while we were in college. I graduated with a degree in music education. And I had a private studio that I taught. I had probably 40 students a week and taught privately out of our home. My husband was also a musician, and our music put food on the table for a long time while we were in college. His job moved us to Tulsa, Oklahoma, and I was 9 months pregnant and in a new home that needed draperies, and I needed nursery items. And so I put to use the skills that my mom and grandma taught me, and made draperies for the home. And through the years, I sewed for friends, but it remained a hobby. Mm-hmm. It was a hobby, and we remained very active in our music through our church. And so, again, it was still just a hobby, though. And then we built a home in Broken Arrow, which is just a suburb of Tulsa. Mm-hmm. And again, a new home. And I had my first major drapery project. I had 12-foot ceilings, and I was creating 12-foot drapes with no table, with nothing but my dining room table and the floor. Mm-hmm. A little challenging because of that. Right. But that's when I began to know I kind of had a knack for soft furnishings. Okay. I could, you'd go to the home shows and this, that, and the other, and I could look at it and tell you the way it was made. Construction is my forte. Okay. I love to look at something and say, okay, I think this is the way they would put that together. And then I'd go scope it out on YouTube or something. And sure enough, I was right. Okay. And so that's, kind of how I realized that this might be a good vocation, or at least a part-time job. As the kids grew up and left home, I realized I'm going to need something to do. Mm-hmm. And I opened a little Etsy shop. Okay. And I did soft furnishings for the Etsy shop. I had everything from placemats to draperies and wall art. I did all kinds of things. And I really just closed that about a year ago. Okay. I made more burlap placemats out of that thing. I just laugh. They were canvas backed with mitered corners. They were really cute. But that was when burlap was big. Yes. So through that, I had a friend from church who was a recent widow with an autistic child who had a home decor shop. And I knew she needed help. Right. And so I said, Deanna, can I'll volunteer my time in the shop to help you out. If I could just put my business card by the cash register.
Mm-hmm.
He thought that was a great idea. And we worked together for years. I found out not only she, but her mother were both great seamstresses, and she was a great interior designer.
Okay.
So as she needed things for the shop, I would create draperies or whatever. Not that much for resale, but just to help decorate the shop, really.
Okay.
And then as she had private clients, I helped her with whatever draperies she needed.
Okay.
But one of the first things I ever made for her, she sold these high-end linens, Bella Notte linens. I don't know if you're familiar.
I am, yeah.
They're lovely. But she wanted a really beautiful headboard to put it on her beds.
Mm-hmm.
And she said, Robin, let's do these as slip covers. And I'd made other slip covers for her.
Mm-hmm.
So I constructed the headboard with a muslin base, and then I did silk velvet headboards with ruching along the edgings.
Oh my gosh.
And so if you changed your design or your colors, slip that puppy off and put another one on.
Right.
And it came out wonderful. I had velvet. I used linen. Linen was a lovely look for a headboard. They were untufted, of course, because they were slip covers.
Right.
But that was one of the first things I did. And it was really funny. We were working with one of her clients, and we went to a supply store there in Tulsa, drapery, window covering supply.
Mm-hmm.
And she said, Robin, it'd be a good idea if you opened an account here. I said, oh, okay, I will. And I was filling out the form, and I kind of leaned over to her and whispered, and I said, what am I? Because I knew I wasn't an interior designer.
Okay. I'm with you on that one. I know I'm not one of those.
She said, you're a workroom. I went, oh, light came on. I had never even heard the term. I didn't know what I was.
So many of us say that. I agree.
Yeah, just crazy. So, I continued to work for her for several years. 2013, about there, my private clients began growing just through word of mouth, friends and family. And our daughter was getting married in her home in 2014. So I had some furniture and some things to do to prepare the home for that wedding. And I went into Bassett Home Furnishings in Tulsa, Oklahoma. And I was looking for a dining table, but I just said, hey, I'm a drapery workroom. Here's my card if y'all ever need any work. Well, Bassett has all interior designers on the floor. They are not furniture salespeople. They are interior designers and marvelous folks. Well, one of them called me for a private job just for her, not a client's job. And a second one called me for a private job. I think they were checking me out.
I think so too.
And from there, they have been my main client for the last 8 years.
Wow. And think about it, Robin. It was, you went in there to purchase something for yourself and
Yes.
the wherewithal to say, here's my business card.
Yeah. And it was just one of those, God ordained things, I think, I have made great friends with many of the designers. The owner, Cindy Claiborne, shout out to her. She manages those folks because, some designers understand window treatments. Some designers don't.
That's correct.
And so she always is the liaison and understands when miscommunications happen. She's just great, great. And so that's been, like I said, my main client for the last 8 years. 2020 was killer.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, I've never been so busy in my life. I was working 7 days a week and just cranking it out. And then during COVID, we decided we really need to be closer to family.
Okay.
And so at the end of 2020, we moved to Norman, Oklahoma, which is just south of Oklahoma City.
Okay.
So we're back in central Oklahoma where we grew up and about 5 minutes from 2 of our grandsons.
Okay.
So
when you said your babysitting services were needed, I thought you must be close by.
Yeah.
It's not really convenient for anybody.
Right. So I raised all 4 kids in Tulsa.
Okay.
And, but they've all scattered and ends up this central corridor right here brings me closest to all of them.
Okay.
And so it made sense to be back in central Oklahoma. So Bassett was wonderful. It said, oh yeah, we'll work long distance. And so I've kept them as a client. There was another small furniture store in Broken Arrow that I've worked for. What they do is if the client wants soft furnishings, they just say, call Robin. Yeah. They don't manage it at all, whereas Bassett manages it. I rarely see the client. Though in the early years when I had more time, I would go to the client. I would do all the measuring. I would even go to installations. Mm-hmm. One of the designers and I have traveled all over Oklahoma installing, but as business picked up, I didn't have time for that anymore. Yeah. So it's kind of sad because I rarely see an install, but
it's amazing to me how different all of our business models are because I do the measure. I'm there at the install. Kathy Cuddington was saying that she never goes to the install. It's like, you come to me, you give me everything you need, and then you take it and you go install it. Yeah. And I love that the option for us to have our businesses run so differently. Like some of us just don't want to be out of the workroom. Yeah. I go stir crazy sometimes if I'm in the workroom too much. So going out and meeting the clients is great. And I don't know how I'd handle never seeing my work installed. And I get to see it all the time, but you don't.
Right. I really don't. I've tried to train the installers at Bassett to take pictures for me. Right. It's actually the owner's husband who does a lot of or at least manages the installations. I'm going, Steve, please take pictures. But he he rarely does. Okay. If the designer's there, they will. Okay. And they'll send me pictures. And because I love to post them,
Yeah, exactly.
I like to have record.
Exactly. But it's interesting to me when people are thinking about how to run their business, that is an absolute option for them to do something similar to that. But I don't know if everyone considers that.
Right. And I've had it both ways. And like you, I do love going out. Mm-hmm. But there's that fine line of, I don't work for that client, for that person. Yes. I work for the company. Mm-hmm. So therefore, my interaction with the client has to be a little bit marked. And I've had a time or two where they've approached me and I said, no, you'll have to go through Bassett. Yes. That is who you know. So that's a little tricky when you do go to the client under these circumstances,
I agree with you. And I'm a to the trade workroom. I have been to clients' homes without the designer once the relationship has been established. Right. And I have designers who manage the entire process. And I only speak to the client when I'm in their house. Or I have designers who just say, it's this here, take care of them. Yes.
Please. That's that other furniture store.
Exactly.
It's like, here. Yes. They understand nothing about draperies. And so,
right. And so they're happy to have me as their person. But there are times when I've had, if I call you, will my window treatments be cheaper? And things like that. And that's, first of all, I would never poach a client. But secondly, you have to educate people then at that point and go, no, it won't be cheaper. It'll be the same price.
Right. Yeah. And that's, and I've had that happen with one other client who started with Bassett, and then they somehow got my name. Okay. And actually, it was a St. Jude home, and they ended up with the home. They'd won the home. Mm-hmm. It's a charity thing. Right. And, but somehow they got my name. And I said, I'm sorry, this came through Bassett. Yeah. I really can't.
Yeah, that's my bread and butter. I can't afford it.
Yeah. No, they've been too good to me. That's exactly right.
So it's still working for you to have a long distance relationship with them then?
It has. Mm-hmm. Most of the time I'm going up to deliver, and, I don't mind that. My friends are up there. I lived 36 years in Tulsa. Okay. So to separate from my friends is kind of like pulling teeth.
I can imagine.
Yeah. So going up, it has worked fine so far. Okay. Business has been slower this year, and I think mainly because I don't have as many private clients having changed location, though I still have a few that, we're working through projects. Okay. And sometimes they come down here, and if it's one of those, this is a rush order, they'll come down and get it. Okay. So we work both ways. Mm-hmm.
I love that when we have established relationships with our clients, whether they're homeowners or designers or a store like you do, that we know what we're willing to do. Like you said, if there's an oops and a rush order, you've worked with them long enough that it's not an issue, and it's not someone who does it on a regular basis. Oh, oops, I forgot. Oh, oops, I forgot this. It's just something that occasionally happens, and we all work around that. And I love that with ongoing relationships, that's what we can have. And I know there are people who don't love working with designers, but that's one of the things I do love about it. We have a relationship, and I can say, yeah, that's not going to be done for another couple of weeks because, of whatever reason. And then they go, okay, all right, because they know I'm reliable. So therefore they know I'm not just pushing them off. Yeah. And I like that part of it.
Yes, I do too. Cindy and I have become really good at communicating. Mm-hmm. Because some of her designers, like I said, really don't know how to do what they're doing. And she's taken their measurements and they've been wrong. Mm-hmm. And, I've made up the entire project. There was one project three times. I made it over 3 times because of mainly the designer did it wrong. Mm-hmm. And, it's those that I try to, because they're such a great client, though I have the work, I will give them a little bit lower rate just to help save her some money, because like I said, she's been my bread and butter for 8 years.
Yeah. So, and that's actually an interesting dynamic too, Robin, because Cindy is in charge of multiple designers, and I'm sure some have come and gone over the time that you've been working there. Mm-hmm. So it's not even the same as a to the trade relationship like I have, because it's one designer. I'm not working with firms. I'm working with one person. So she's got to manage the people under her and make sure their information is correct. And how can she if she's not out there holding hands with them while they do it? So that's
right.
Yeah. So mistakes really have to be figured. The possibility of mistakes kind of has to be figured into what you're doing.
Yeah. And like I said, we've learned to communicate very well.
Okay.
And what are your returns? What's your rod width? I always need to know a rod width, and things like that. We have communicated well over the years. And then it's really just been this one designer who's really messed up, and she's now gone.
Okay. So that solves that problem.
That solves that problem.
Okay.
But and it's funny because different designers are different. Some of them are very exacting, and some of them are going, anything will do. Just, as long as it'll work, whatever you think looks best.
Right.
And so I do what I think looks best.
And you know what? That's another interesting dynamic, because I think that sometimes we work better if someone said, it depends on how creative we are.
Right.
For instance, I've had designers say to me, here's the space between the top of the window and the crown molding. Where do you think the hardware should go? Mm-hmm. And, or they'll say, well, which do you prefer, resting on the floor or a half inch above? I'm always a resting on the floor person, because that gives you a little leeway and just in case. Mm-hmm. But then I have designers who are very specific, and I wanted a half inches off the floor. And I always want my hardware halfway between, within reason.
Right. Windows and crowns. Yeah.
So you're working with one manager, but different designers with
multiple
different styles. Styles, I should say.
Yes,
okay.
Yes.
Is that challenging for you?
Well, one has become a very good friend.
Okay.
And in fact, she's designing my daughter's house right now.
Oh, wonderful. That's exciting.
And, we have just done so much together that I really understand what she wants. And, she can give me the basics and I can just go with it. Some of the others I don't know as well, and so I rely totally on Cindy. Mm-hmm. And Cindy takes responsibility for what she sends me, and I take responsibility for what I create and construct, and most of the time we're right on.
Okay.
Just every now and then do we have a little miscommunication, and we just try to do each other fairly.
Right. Yeah. It's interesting that you said that about you get to know them, and I think again when I hear people say they don't like working with designers, That's one of the things I do love, because I get to know them, and we can not read each other's minds, but sometimes they will forget to give me the return, but they're using the same hardware they've used over and over again. So I know what the return is. Like, there are things like that make that kind of a relationship really great in my mind. I know there are people who love starting out a relationship with new retail clients and then another new retail client. I really like working with the same people so that I can get that for what they like.
Yes. And it's just private clients, retail clients are just a lot of work. Mm-hmm. I like it when the fabric shows up on my door. The design is decided, and I can just crank them out. Yeah. I like that. If I'm having to hunt fabric for clients, I'm not good at knowing how to price for that. Mm-hmm. I know what my cost per width is. Right. But then when I've got to spend time hunting fabric and deciding on, all that stuff, and getting hardware, that's just a whole lot more work. Mm-hmm. And knowing how to price it, as well as having the time to do it. Yeah. I do like working for designers because all that other stuff is taken care of.
That's why I like it. And I know there are people who love the hunt for fabric and all of that. So again, I love that there's so many different ways for us to run our businesses. So I'm curious to find out about, you were sewing and you were making things for yourself. So you have this opportunity to make things for the shop. Did you have any industrial machines? Were you only using a home machine?
Well, when I first started, I purchased a Baby Lock Decorator's Choice. Okay. And again, I didn't do a whole lot of research, but it seemed like a right machine for me, and it worked well. As the years went on, I realized I did need an industrial. And I bought a console used from an upholstery worker. A local upholstery shop was getting rid of one of his machines, and I bought a used console straight stitch, and it's been my workhorse for 12 years. And then my next purchase was a blind hemmer, and it was what was it? I've forgotten, but I replaced it with a tack sew. Okay. It was not a very good machine even used, but it worked for what I needed it to, because at that time I was doing a lot of lightweight linens with lightweight linings, and it was good for that. Okay. But once I got into working with Bassett, I used quite a bit of upholstery fabric. Well, the plus side of being in Tulsa is that Fabric Hut is around the corner. Okay. So I have the Fabric Hut showroom in Tulsa, Oklahoma, as well as the outlet outside of Tulsa in Chakota. Okay. Yeah. I don't think that's right. Anyway. So we have Fabric Hut fabrics, and then we also have the Bassett fabrics that we use a lot of, and those are heavier weight. Those Bassets a lot of times are a lightweight upholstery. Okay. Which, they make into beautiful draperies. They hold their shape. Oh. Their weave is perfect. And, but I needed a heavier duty blind hemmer. Okay. So I purchased a tack sew. In fact, I purchased it through my guy that services my machines. Okay. So it's a good little machine.
And your workroom is in your home?
My workroom has always been in my home. It started out in my Tulsa home. It was in a spare bedroom. Once my last son moved out, he said, "Mom, I think I need my bedroom furniture. Can I have it?" I said, "Absolutely."
Yes, you can.
And I had a little 3x5 hobby table. And I can't tell you how many draperies I made on that 3x5 table. Then through Rowley, I found out about that wonderful table that they have instructions for. And I had taken a class here locally in Tulsa from a woman who closed down her workroom, but was offering week-long workshops. And I learned so much from her. And one other thing is her son built those tables. And so I had her son build me a table. I had a 20 by 20 game room in the house. And so I had been using it primarily as a game room with the kids growing up, but I had this table made with a takeoff top. And so I could slide the top off, use that as I covered in burlap, had a little burlap slip cover for it. And more burlap than I
was going to
say again.
You've had your fill of burlap.
But it became a little sofa table. Mm-hmm. So I could roll it over to the side and push the top into another room, and I still had my game room.
Okay.
Well, after a few years, that went too. Mm-hmm. I took over the game room, and I had a 20 by 20 room with a nice big 5 by 8 table. I added another 3 feet to it mm-hmm. with that little hobby table, and I ended up with a 5 by 11, and I still have a 5 by 11 in my new home. Okay. We took the upstairs, the extra bedroom, mm-hmm. The extra game room, the extra room, and I have all my machines in it.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah, it is. It works out well, and having everything set up all the time, not having to tear anything down was a lifesaver in Tulsa. So I was real glad to have a large room devoted to the workroom.
Okay. I do think it's interesting how many of us we can accommodate, like, this is the space we have and we work around it until we've been doing it for a little while. And then it's like, this just is not going to keep working like this. And it's good that we make those adjustments. And I can be more efficient if I use a 20 by 20 room without having to pack everything up and put it away every time I'm having company over.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. So, yeah. And so, yes, I've always worked out of the home. Kind of working for my friend in her retail decor shop gave me an idea that I did not want to own a retail store.
I'm with you on that too.
Yeah. The work, I went to market with her. We did the whole 9 yards together, and it's, I don't know how, especially during COVID, so many didn't make it.
Right.
But I don't know how anybody makes it with a retail store. It just takes a lot. You've got to have a big business.
You do. And what I've noticed is, I was just having this conversation with someone recently about when you are in a retail space, depending on where it is, you need to kind of keep the same hours as other people in.
Mm-hmm.
And if people are able to walk in anytime, they can interrupt you if you are the fabricator.
Right.
And then you end up with things like candles and things like just to sell things. And I love candles, but if I want to be making window treatments, I don't want to be stopping to sell somebody a candle. That's what I want to be focused on.
Right. Dealing with the inventory of a retail shop. Yeah. Because you just don't know how do you know what's going to sell?
Yeah, I know there are people who are really great at that. Again, mm-hmm. I'm not that person.
Me neither. And I'm not the decorator either. Tell me what you want and I will create it.
Yes. I'm with you on that. The sponsors of the So Much More podcast allow me to bring guests to you each week. And without them, I couldn't do it. I'm pleased as the owner of the Curtains and Soft Furnishings Resource Library that I can use the library to help sponsor the podcast as well. The library hosts the industry's largest curated collection of educational resources for the custom home furnishings professional. Membership to the library gives you access to a wealth of downloadable reference materials, videos, live events, as well as a community of support to help you develop your design, sales, and fabrication skills, and to grow or start a business. Join the library today at csfrl.org. The Workroom Channel is the premier online training provider for professional fabrication skills. Go to theworkroomchannel.com to browse the selection of anytime access courses created by industry experts. Watch detailed demonstration videos, download companion materials, and participate in private course discussion boards with your instructor and classmates from around the world. Start your course path today at theworkroomchannel.com. Education, networking, visibility, and industry discounts are just a few of the benefits that are offered to members of the Window Covering Association of America. The WCAA is the only national nonprofit trade association that's dedicated to the window coverings industry and the dealers, decorators, workrooms, designers, and installers that make up our membership. The library is a gold level sponsor of the WCAA. Join today at WCAA.org. WCAA, where you are never in business alone. Discover Climacca Studios, where innovation meets exceptional design. Climacca fabric and wallpaper collections are inspired by the original works of collaborating artists and developed with the understanding of how fabrics are manipulated into exquisite soft home furnishings. Workroom businesses enjoy exclusive access to engineered designs and best trade pricing. From clever layouts to classic linen prints, Climacca Studios delivers the quality and consistency that your business demands. And Climacca's reliable, on-time delivery keeps your projects running smoothly. Go to climaccastudios.com for swatches and trade account information. Climacca Studios, for the joy and profit of workrooms. So, Robin, in this journey for you, what has been the biggest? First, I want to ask you, what is your definition of success? And what has been your biggest success in your business so far?
Oh, let's think about that. What I consider the best success is a happy client.
Okay.
If they are pleased and their room brings them joy, that's what I'm there to help create. Mm-hmm. As far as, let's see, what was your other question?
What to you, what's been the biggest success in your business?
I think just keeping it going, having the enough clientele. And again, it's just a kind of a God thing because I didn't do a lot of marketing. Mm-hmm. It's been mostly word of mouth. I did create a web page, but my search engine optimization workings were not great.
Okay.
But it's been word of mouth, and I've just been very happy to have a successful business for the last, 12 years.
Okay.
Did
you ever consider quitting in any of that?
No, not really. I mean, there were years that were slow, especially starting out. But because I was a second income and it kind of evolved from a hobby, I didn't ever, I just did it.
Okay.
And enjoyed doing it. And because I enjoyed doing it, I just kept going.
Okay.
Knowing that the business would come as it needed to.
Okay. I'm curious about running the business, mm-hmm. Especially since, as you said, it started as a hobby. Mm-hmm. At what point did you feel like you were running a business and not a hobby?
I think when Bassett came on board,
okay,
then I knew I was a true business. I was consistently doing business to the trade,
okay,
and up to that point, I've been making beautiful draperies for friends and for their friends' friends, mm-hmm. and for their friends' friends, and for some reason, it didn't feel so much like a business,
right?
Because I was sewing for people I knew or people they knew, mm-hmm. and but once I began selling to the trade, I feel like that was kind of the turning point of, this is a real business, and I'm going to make a go of this.
Okay. This isn't actually one of the questions that I sent you ahead of time, but what part of running the business do you actually enjoy?
I love the construction side. I love figuring out how it's all going to go together.
Okay.
Whether it's an arched window and how you're going to work that out. But I do. I love the planning side of it, of getting it to work with whatever fabric I have.
Okay.
And then I love to sew, but so little sewing is done.
No, it really isn't that much sewing. It really is construction. That's the right word.
It is construction. Yeah, it is construction. And I laugh because my designers love black outlining. Well, those pesky pinholes of light are a real trick. So, man, do I use dough fix like crazy? Mm-hmm. I use that Borton fix tape because that way my side seams do not have holes in them and they're not seeing light through them.
Right.
So I have, and once the hems are done and the panels are pieced, they never leave the table.
Right.
I'm doing everything on the table until I go in my pleats. So it makes for fast construction, I think. Yeah.
And when you're trying to crank things out, that is really important.
Yes, it is. And I feel like that, you said, I'm good at fast.
Okay.
I'm not good at waiting, but I'm good at fast.
I like that.
I can crank it out pretty quickly. I'm always surprised at, double wides or triple wide panels, how quickly they do go together, even with my only 60-inch wide table. I'm passing it over 3 times.
Right, right.
But it goes together pretty quickly.
Okay. I asked you about success. You talked about the oopsies. I don't consider them your mistakes because you're working off of the information that you have. But how do you handle mistakes that are yours, that you're responsible for? And what happens to you when you make a mistake like that?
I remember doing a cushion for a client. And it was early on in my business, and cushions were a little bit new to me. Mm-hmm. But I always feel like I know what I'm doing. And sure enough, I cut out 2 top pieces.
Ah,
yeah, and there was no fixing it. But fortunately, she had bought locally on her fabrics, and I knew where she bought it, and went over there and just had to buy new fabric at my cost. Mm-hmm. And I never told her. Okay. So if I can fix it with the client not knowing, I think that's better. But if it's something that cannot be withheld from the client, I will, just bone up and this is what's happened. Own up, not bone up, own up, and just say, this is what happened. It was a mistake and we're going to have to do whatever to correct it.
Okay.
So, but and mistakes are going to happen.
Yeah.
I think I've learned that from Cindy more than anybody.
Okay.
She has such grace. When her designers do oopses, I said, Cindy, how do you do that? She said, well, we've all made mistakes, and she's just been a very good example of owning up to what's happened and just got to fix it.
Mm-hmm. And it's interesting, like you said, she's handling other people's mistakes. So how she handles that is important because she could come to you and say, well, she did it again and she messed up again, but it's not going to help anyone.
No,
let's just do it and get it done. Let's just fix the problem and find out why it's happening. But let's fix the problem. Okay.
Yeah, and the main thing is to make a happy client.
Yes.
And all the in-between stuff, sometimes it costs some money.
Yeah.
But we can fix it.
Right. And sometimes it doesn't look pretty in between. But you can get there.
Yes, we can get there.
So, Robin, you mentioned turning to your friend and saying, what am I, when you were setting up your account? Since that time, how do you feel like you've grown as a person? Where have you looked for education? What have you done? Because I'm listening to you, and for someone who didn't know they were a workroom, you are smart and savvy. And like you said, I think I know how to do things. And you clearly have that fabrication brain. When you look at something, you can figure things out. But how do you think you've evolved since then in running your business and in your education?
Yes, for education, I have only attended that one workshop here there in Tulsa from the Draper Workroom, who was retiring, and she was a great help. I mean, I learned all the basics from her. We did balances and we did panels, and I think we even did a Roman shade. So that week was cram-packed full, and but I got basics in of all of that. I have to admit, YouTube. There's a guy named Scott Weaver who is on YouTube. He's not in any of the other forums. Okay. But he has some great instructional things.
Okay.
And so I have picked up things that way. Susan's book, Susan Woodcock's book on window treatments. What is it? Window treatments, custom curtain shades and treatments and window treatments. Great resource. And like I said, YouTube.
Okay.
So those have been my educational things, though I have so wanted to go to some of Susan's Workroom Tech's workshops. And again, I'm a small workroom. I don't make a lot per year. And that with the travel expense, it would be like, thousands for me to make that trip. So I've not done it, but I'm really excited about her video classes.
Yes. I was just going to say that. I think that's a great way to, when travel isn't the option that you want to do, that you can do the online class.
Right. And that's my next step, is to take one of her online classes. So in education, that's kind of how I've done it. And like you said, like I told you, I have a sense for fabrication. I have a sense, the engineering side of it. I can look at things and tell you how it's done. As far as business involvement, it has been a learn as you go. My husband's an accountant, which helps.
Yes.
And he made me do the inventory every year.
Oh, man.
So that's kind of been the side of the business side. He has taught me what I need to do and how to do it. But I felt very alone for a very long time. I knew of one other workroom in the Tulsa area, and a friend had actually worked for her a little bit. And I had tried to reach out, and she was very private. She was not going to share anything. And even my friend who worked for her said, I was given only certain things to do, and she would not share production techniques or anything with me. So I thought, oh, well, I guess that's the way everybody is.
Right.
All the workrooms are. So I just kind of worked all on my own for forever, and YouTube things I didn't know.
Right.
And then I discovered the Facebook pages.
Okay.
And it is like a family.
Right.
I mean, you've got this community of people who are so willing to share and to help and encourage. It has been like, like I said, it's been like family. It's like all of a sudden I have all these friends.
Right.
And I think I'll ask a question. Never fails. Scott Robbins speaks up, or someone speaks up and answers those questions. And it's been so helpful on things. And actually, I did find a workroom that was within 45 minutes of me. Joanne Wieberdink was in Kellyville. Okay. And I didn't know she was there. I'm in Tulsa. She's in Kellyville. We're about 30, 45 minutes apart. Not far at all. Oh my gosh. She invited me to one of Beth's DoFix seminars that were going to be at her house. And that was really the first time we met. But we have been friends ever since. Joanne, do you have any of this? I am all out and I can't wait.
Right. Especially now. Now. Right.
Yes. And she's done the same thing for me. We've been able to help one another. I'm sick that I'm further away from her because I don't know any workrooms in Norman. But so it was just an opening for networking within the industry. Across the country. Right. So that has been such a great help and been educational as well as just encouraging and helping to see how other people do it. Yes. And just
just another person you can call and say, okay, here's the problem I'm having. Can you help me? But you're right. Having that connection to others that do what we do is life-changing.
It really is. It really is. And it has been a huge encouragement to me. And I think it's helped me to run my business better.
Okay. That's fantastic. Do you use much technology in your business, Robin?
Not really. Like I said, I go on YouTube and workroom channel, I do that type of thing. But as far as, any kind of QuickBooks or those other type of programs. I really don't use them. I've got an accountant for a husband, and I've got, I do, the app I use quite often is the Cellrite Roman shade calculator. Okay. They have a really good calculator that you can use. But other than that, I'm not a real techie guy.
Okay. All right. Some of us are, some of us aren't. And I've laughed at how much technology I love to use, but I've said when it really comes down to it, it's needle and thread.
Yeah.
I mean, it's.
Yeah. Well, and I'm sitting there calculating, yardage for my designers. And, I don't really even need a calculator.
Okay, well, I bow down to you on that one because I always need a calculator.
I add 20 inches to the length and decide on it. If it's a really tough repeat, then I have to have a calculator.
Okay. All right. And I also think sometimes it's the repetition. If you've done something enough times, that stays in your head. But for me, it's like, it's a whole new thing each and every time. And I'm dragging out that calculator.
Yeah.
What 3 business items could you not live without?
My table, my console, my straight stitch. It's my workhorse. And probably, third one. I would say my blind hemmer.
Okay.
I can't do hems without it.
Okay. And especially because you're using more frequently a heavier fabric. You're not going to be hemming those things by hand. That's too hard. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Robin, do you ever get to sew for pleasure?
I do. Okay. On occasion. We're in a new house. And so and we have this huge patio. So I've been starting with cushions for the outdoors, and I've got quite a bit to sew out there. And I really want to make a shade, a solar shade for one of the areas. And so anyway, I do when I have time. And like I said, this year's been a little bit slower than last year. So I've had a few drops in I don't have 2 or 3 jobs lined up behind each one. I usually have one job behind each one. And so when I have those breaks, I'll usually do cushions.
Okay. All right.
And I did make my bedroom draperies. So.
Okay. What is your favorite thing to make?
Probably pinch pleat drapes.
Okay.
I said I'm not good at waiting. They're fast.
Yeah.
They come together quickly. It's by rote. I know what I'm doing every time. And I love it because they're precise. I like the uniformity of them. So the speed at which I can construct and the product I really love.
Okay. What do you do extremely well?
I would say, like I said, get the job done in a timely fashion, as well as process improvement. I'm always looking at ways, how can I do this better? What does this fabric keep me from doing or allow me to do to improve the process of getting it into whatever it's being created into?
That's a great thought, Robin. I don't know that I've ever articulated that way. And I think that's great. What will it allow me to do? What will it keep me from doing?
Right. Yeah. Because you get too thick of a fabric and it limits you.
Right.
You get too lightweight of a linen and it's going to grow on you and go everywhere. So the fabric makeup is huge and it can dictate how and what you're doing. So that I feel like I do well.
Okay. What do you not do so well?
Pricing is probably one of my worst. I tend, when I'm working with the trade, I've got all that down. When I'm working with a private client, I question myself. I always think I'm overpricing, and then I look at my hours and I know I'm not.
Right.
But probably pricing and waiting on fabric.
Yeah, we have no control over that right now.
Yeah, really.
What about you would surprise people?
Music, which we still do a lot of through our church. until we moved. But we've been involved in music ministry our entire lives. Mm-hmm. But music is work. For me to perform is work. Mm-hmm. To sew is joy.
Okay.
So those two items that are very prominent in my life, and with my degree in music, and I do love music, mm-hmm. but to perform is work.
I can imagine. And I have to say, the one disadvantage to the podcast is I'm the only one who can see the gorgeous piano behind you. Absolutely beautiful. And my whole life, I've always wanted to play the piano, and I cannot, I do not. So, but I'm picturing the process of getting ready to perform, and that has to be challenging.
Yeah. And my husband he's a natural. I mean, mm-hmm. he plays by ear. It's what he does. It's what he loves. And I do it with him as we do things together, mm-hmm. but it's still work for me.
Okay. All right. That is interesting. And I also find it fascinating that he, like you said, it comes naturally to him, but he's an accountant.
Yes.
And that's a very right brain. Yeah. I'm impressed by that. Of the accountants I know, none of them are as creative as someone who is a musician.
Yeah. He is very creative.
Okay.
So yeah, it is. It's funny. We've said he's crazy.
Robin, in what ways do you think you're resilient?
Well, that's a good question. I think it's just that I will keep after it until I get it right.
Okay.
Sometimes things don't go together quite the way you thought they were going to go. That's how I think of corner sports.
Yeah, yes. That's funny. That's what popped into my mind.
Yeah. But it's not quite right. So I say tenacity to stay with the project until it is perfect, as perfect as I can make it.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. What traits do you think are important for an entrepreneur to have? You've been doing this for a few years now. What do you think? What traits would you want to see in someone who is starting their own business?
I would say make sure you network, because I started a lonely business. I knew no one, didn't even know what it was.
Right.
So I would say network with other workrooms, with designers, and get a feel for, what's out there. Like I said, I'm not a designer, so I don't know trends necessarily. Mm-hmm. So it's good for me to talk to designers. What are the going trends? What is out there? And other workrooms. How do you do this? And if your construction method is different than theirs, look and see if it would be good for you to incorporate their style of construction or not, but it's always good to learn from others.
Right.
And work. And know you're not alone.
Yeah, that's important. Robin, you mentioned you have a website, and you also have a Facebook page for your business. Are you on Instagram?
I am not.
Okay.
I probably should be, but I'm not. I usually hashtag it, but I don't. It's funny. Most people do Instagram and then Facebook. I just do Facebook.
Okay.
Every now and then I'll shoot it on Instagram, but it's just my name, Robin Reynolds.
Okay. Well, I'll put links to your business, to your website and to your business Facebook page.
I'm a little embarrassed about my website, so it's not very good. In fact, I have a daughter who's a graphic designer, and, she works websites all the time. And I'm going, would you please take over my website?
Wait, is this the same daughter who you're going to be making window treatments for?
No, different daughter.
Shoot. Okay. I was going to say you could hold those window treatments hostage. Robin, it's really been a pleasure talking with you today. So I hate to ask the final question, but what advice would you give for someone who's new in the business or someone who's been in business for a while?
I would say make sure go ahead and invest in good machinery. Mm-hmm. Good machinery will produce a better product. And like we said before, make sure you're networking and communicating with those in the trade. And though my education has been kind of hodgepodge, continuing education is always important.
Yeah.
So I'd say those things would be the most important things I would share with a new business owner.
Okay. Robin, thank you so much. I'm so grateful that you said yes when I asked you.
Well, I'm so grateful you asked. This has been a lot of fun.
Oh, good. I'm glad. I find it very interesting sometimes, the response I get from people when I ask them to be a guest on the podcast. I often have people say, well, I'm only a one-person workroom. I don't know what I would have to offer. But inevitably, those are the people who either have a different business model or who are just a delight to talk with, and I learned so much from. And Robin was one of those people. She hesitated a little bit when I asked, but I really feel like I learned a lot from her, and I think her story is really fascinating. I hope you found it as interesting as I did. Thank you so much for listening. I hope you have a great day.